In Our Expert Opinion podcast is brought to you by Saunders Real Estate, the Southeast's leading land and commercial real estate firm, helping clients make bold and informed investment decisions since 1996.
Good afternoon, and welcome back to another edition of our Saunders podcast. Today, I'm joined by very special guests. First off, from Saunders team, joining me from South Carolina, Brandon DuRant. Brandon, how are you?
Good, Tyler. How are you, man?
I'm doing great. It's a Monday, but it's an exciting week to talk a lot about Florida issues and things that are going on in ag in Florida. I've got Angus Williams and Allan Charles joining me this morning. Fellas, how are y'all?
Doing great.
Doing great. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, very much. Thank you very
Absolutely.
Very much.
Y'all are longtime friends of our company, sponsors of our land conference, and you go way back with Dean and a lot of folks here at Saunders. So it's a pleasure to get you on the podcast.
Yeah, and I think this is my third podcast, actually.
You're a veteran at this point.
Yeah, I've done a couple of these.
No nerves, nothing like that today?
Not that I can tell.
Allan, this is your first time, I think, on our podcast. So
this is so we can do metrics to see how we do.
What kind of boost we get from having you on compared to this Angus over there?
Drop down one or the other.
That's right. Well, you guys are with Lewis, Longman Walker law firm. Will y'all tell us a little bit more about your firm, where you're based, services that y'all do, and we can kind of talk a little bit about what we're going to do today.
Sure. So we're a Florida-based law firm. We've got offices in Tallahassee, West Palm Beach, St. Petersburg, Jacksonville. We have an office, a really small office in Tampa as well. But we really focus on environmental and land use. We a couple of other things that we do, but it's probably easier to tell you that all of the things that we don't do. We don't do criminal. We don't do a lot of corporate work. We don't do tax work, that kind of thing. But if it's land, government, and water, if there's an intersection there, we're there. We do that. And so do land use work and environmental work, entitlements, but also permitting on both sides, getting your permit, keeping your permit, and then dealing with what happens sometimes if the permit doesn't go exactly, operations don't exactly comply, allegedly, from our standpoint. Right. So we deal with that. Yeah.
Well, that's exciting. And last time we've had you on the podcast, we talked a lot about land use, development pressure, entitlements, things like that. Today, we're going to talk more on the environmental side. And so just at a high level, where are we at environmentally in Florida? What kind of pressures are you seeing, government programs, government impact in some of this? And that can kind of steer some of the discussion today.
Yeah. And so there has been a focus for a long, long time, and it's becoming very, very important to understand that of the pressures that are on the environmental systems. And it really does, in Florida, it's about the water. We have an air program. We have, contaminated sites and those kinds of things, but we don't have big factories. We don't have big, industrial users. There's some industrial users, but not like you would have.
We're not Pittsburgh.
That's right.
And we're a peninsula, so we have excellent flushing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it all deals with our focus is on, in the state on environmental issues is not only water quantities, which we're in a severe drought right now in Swift Mud, in the Southwest Florida region here, but also water quality. And so we'll probably talk more about water quality today, of that piece of it. And it's the water quality part of it that really drives a lot of the things that we want to talk about today, I think, with ag, because that's where that pushes it. Not to discount the quantity issue, because that's a real problem too.
Right. So we talk about Florida being a big ag state. We got all this development pressure, impact on water, right? Let's talk a little bit about water quality, water availability, how that factors into ag with best management practices, things like that. Can you kind of talk a little bit about reasons for BMPs, what they are, impact on landowners, farmers, things of that nature?
Yeah, and it might be better to go back before we get straight into BMPs to talk about pressures on ag to begin with. I mean, you think about Florida, look at it from space. One of the descriptions I heard for Florida a while back is Florida's one big farm surrounded by beaches.
That's a great description. Never thought about it that way.
It is.
You can look at space and an image of Florida, and it looks like a necklace. And I think in the last, 10 years, maybe, now that necklace has a big line through it It's called the I-4 corridor, and Polk County's exploding. And so there's always been pressure on ag, right? That's why we passed the Greenbelt law. That's the favorable tax classification. Then we passed the Right to Farm Act, right? To protect you from private and public nuisances. You shouldn't have to go out of farming because your land got too expensive. You shouldn't have to get out of farming because they decided to build a tract home around your farm.
Right.
Now, with the water quality, water quantity issues, Florida used to have ample access with the Florida aquifer. That is getting a lot of pressure, because more and more people are putting straws in the ground. And BMPs are the next solution to keep you in farming. You shouldn't have to give up farming because you no longer have access to the water you used to. And the idea is really, how do you become a better farmer? You put less on the ground, take less out of the water, and still have the same yield, still be profitable.
Yep.
That's the economic side, which is great. There's also a regulatory side that comes with it. You get access to grants if you want. You can qualify for conservation easements where they'll actually pay to buy your development rights. But you also qualify for preemption from duplication of regulation. So you get that added ability to be more competitive because you're not having to comply with certain local government restrictions that might otherwise apply.
Yeah. I mean, even taking it back, even probably more. So under the Clean Water Act, federal act to protect the water of the nation, actually went into place in the Nixon administration, 1970, and it wasn't signed by Nixon. It was they overruled his veto, I think, is on the history on that one. So it's kind of an interesting story, but not for today. And a part of the Clean Water Act is the water quality, and so it's the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, NPDES permit is what it's called. And so that's I think 402 of the Clean Water Act is where that lies. And 404 is the regular clean water. And so under 402, you have to comply with that act. And so in the state of Florida, through the years, we've identified all of the different waters, rivers, lakes, and those kinds of things for impairment. Do they meet the state of Florida's water quality standards to comply with 402 of the Clean Water Act? And so we've come up with a list of impaired waters. These do not meet them. And then the idea is in Chapter 403 of the Florida statutes is to put in place how do we get them to be compliant?
Right.
How do
we fix this?
That's
right.
Right. That's right. I know it. It's like you get a meal at a great restaurant and you taste it and like it needs a little bit of salt. Well, how are you going to you got to fix that,
Right.
And so to get good with the water quality side of things, DEP was told by the legislature to put in place basin management action plans for all of these impaired areas. And it's a specific plan that looks at point source, pipe coming out of a factory, easiest one, and non-point source, which for our purposes today is ag. That's ag runoff, field runoff, and those kinds of things, to figure out where the source of these contaminants. And in Florida, we're talking about nitrogen and phosphorus. That's really all we're talking about. And so with that, so they have these basin management action plans to do all of these things. That's where it creeps in the best management practices.
Yep.
So if you sign up for and implement best management practices, if you're a farmer, it assumes you're in compliance with the NPDES permitting and the state water quality standards. So that's your protection.
Yep.
And so there's a lot of reasons. So, I mean,
is there an education component to this when it comes to farmers and ag and landowners, right? When you hear, okay, this is another government program, it's another thing I got to do, it almost feels like it's government reaching or stepping into my rights, but this is actually a really good thing from a protection, from a permitting, from a kind of keeping things at bay perspective, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
And I'll add, this is one of those cool programs where it has all of these excellent benefits and it's completely voluntary.
Well, unless you're in
a
BMAP, Basin Management Action Plan area.
But then it's still compliant. It's still voluntary. It's just the alternative,
Voluntold.
the alternative
That's
is
right.
much harder to comply with.
It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And when you look at a lot of these guys, what kind of acceptance rate are you seeing by farmers and landowners who are participating in this? Just 80, 90, 70% of everybody's jumping in there to look at these different programs?
Yeah, so that's kind of a moving target, and the BMP program is kind of, in my mind, it's hard to call it a program, but I guess that's what it is.
It's more like a list of standards.
It really is, but they're also specific to crops, what you're
Right.
growing, what you're doing.
Correct.
So very good in that perspective, and it's industry driven to come up with the BMP.
What those standards are by
That's right.
commodity.
Mhm.
That's right. That's right. And so, as far as the acceptance rate, that's kind of a moving target. If you look at large ag area, large ag operations, pretty solid. I mean, they're in. They help
Right.
develop them. They're using BMPs from DAX to reduce the amount of to reduce the amount of nutrients they put on the land, but they also use it, like Allan was saying, to get access to grants and those kinds of things to assist with the operation overall. There's a whole host of things. You can go into that in a second, I think. But when you talk about small landowners, it's much, much harder to get a 10, 12, 20 acre farm enrolled. In fact, that's why DAX actually just came up with a small producer BMP, which is helpful. So it's pretty good, I think. And the Wes Gregory, who's the head of the Office of Ag Water Policy at the Department of Agriculture, he continually is driving and continues every year to share with me. I talk to him frequently, actually, and they continue to get better and better enrollment, and they're out there working with the growers and the ranchers and stuff. Yeah,
You made a really neat comparison last week when we were talking about this, about kind of comparing BMPs to the early corn clubs.
Yeah.
And just, can you share that? And just, I think that helps clarify exactly what BMPs are and why they're in place, and that these are really trying to bring value and education and things like that to farmers and landowners.
Absolutely. And so to peel that onion back a little bit more, around the turn of the last century, 1900, in that area, you had some Dust Bowl that popped up a little bit later on, but the Cooperative Extension Service, which is at every land grant university across the nation, University of Florida, go Gators, is our land grant university. And they do an excellent job of doing the research and working through things and figuring out, how do you do this better? How do you get a better crop to plant? Our blueberries, we've created blueberries that you can grow in Florida that are good, and we love them. And created an industry out of that. And so the Cooperative Extension Service has always been interested in helping farmers do things better. And in, I think it was 1908, when the first corn clubs up in Iowa, I believe, was the precursor to the 4-H clubs. And you had the corn clubs that turned into 4-H, and then you had girls sewing clubs that kind of merged and turned into the 4-H program. But it was an idea of, it's going to be hard to get the farmer in the field, a lot of times at that time, plowing behind a mule, to get to change anything on how they're doing.
Yeah, he's been doing it this way his whole life. It's hard to.
I fed my family last year. I'm going to be able to feed my family this year. If I change anything, can I feed my family next year? That's
That's legitimate fear.
Yeah,
correct.
It is.
hard. And so what they learned was we could have these corn clubs in high schools and teach these young men who were working on the farm also the best, newest strategies to increase yield and do things to get better farming practices implemented.
Yeah,
it's
a long-term play, right? Start with the youth, let them learn, let them grow. And then one day when it's their farm, they'll be implementing some of these things.
Let's go ahead and get that next generation up to speed. And actually, IFAS and University of Florida have been fulfilling that mission ever since. And 4-H and FFA also, they've become a huge part of that. Because you would have never thought you'd had a GPS slapped on top of a tractor to grow anything, right? But that's what you're doing. You'd never think you would have a land leveling system for a strawberry field, but that's how they do that. And everything ties back into even the topic we're talking about today.
And actually, it's not Corn Club, but the Florida legislature funds the Florida Ag in the Classroom program. That's done through DAX. And so if you ever see the ag tag, the Florida license plate for ag, that's what pays for it.
Really? I didn't know. Okay, I didn't know that's what funded that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got some of those parked in our parking lot out here.
Yeah.
So back to, all right, if I'm a landowner, farmer, enroll in a BMP program, what other benefits are there to that from a local government permitting perspective, right? There's certain things I know we talked about the other day that are covered in BMP programs that if you're enrolled, you can bypass or circumvent some of those types of restrictions, and also talk a little bit about grant funding and easements, things like that.
Yeah, so I guess from a nuts and bolts, what you'll do is you'll submit what's called a notice of intent. It's a form. You tell DAX, I'm interested in enrolling in BMP. They will come out. They'll arrange a site visit. They'll look at what you're doing. They're not going to tell you to change how you're running your farm. What they'll say is, we think that you fall under this BMP or this BMP, and then they'll make suggestions about how you could change to make you better in terms of water quality runoff or nutrient applications. And then you'll be what's called, you're verified. You're in the program. So under 163.3162, the Ag Lands and Practices Act, there's a couple different benefits. So we've talked about them, but the limitation on duplication of government regulation is one of the big ones that comes to mind. And basically what it says is, if there's any activity that's contemplated within this best management manual, and it's drafted kind of like, it's broad because it's meant to cover a lot of different operations. If there's anything that's contemplated, like, hey, if you're going to be harvesting timber, you should do it so many feet from a navigable body of water, right? You don't want runoff going into the water. That's going to be contemplated, right? Removal of trees is an activity. So and a lot of local governments will have you need to submit a site clearing permit, or you need to get a permit to remove trees over
tree survey,
to identify trees over a certain diameter. That's all an activity that's going to be regulated by that BMP.
That BMP in essence supersedes what the county and local.
And so you don't need to get that site clearing permit or that tree survey or anything. That's a good example, Robert.
You mentioned fencing, like if you need to put fences up, things like that. That I know there's probably some gray there, but just other permits for barns or installations, things like that.
Yeah. And so the tie-in is that under the right to farm laws, because they're scattered and splattered all over the Florida statutes. It's not just one thing. There is a Right to Farm Act, and it deals with nuisance. And it was, I think, 1979 is when it came into play. I remember when it came into play because on my small family farm, we bought a sign to put up next to the subdivision that was building right behind us. We're a farm. You're going to smell things, you're going to hear things, and it's none of your business.
The Wilton Simpson line, exactly none of your damn business.
Pretty much. We put up a sign that said, take a look, leave us alone. That statute is actually in the criminal code. It's in the criminal section of the statute to eliminate nuisance and going after farmers. And so, if you're classified as ag and you're enrolled in the BMPs, then you're eligible to participate in grant programs. And grant program with a water management district or DEP may also include soil sensors for moisture and upgrades and pivot systems. So if you're growing, all kinds of stuff, you're growing snap beans and you want to upgrade your pivot systems, and you've got a soil sensor so where you need water, where you don't. Those they turn on and off when they get to that part of the field. And so you can pay for that, but then you can get grants to help you with that. And so you can get that upgrade. Well, you reduce the amount of water, you reduce the amount of nutrients that you're putting on the crop, you're reducing the amount of runoff that's going on. And so all of those things, but you have to be enrolled in BMPs to be typically available.
Right.
I mean, yeah.
And I mean, and even from just a day-to-day management standpoint, I've seen in managing properties in Florida, the BMP program does not seem to be overreaching. Would you guys agree with that with your clients, that farmers are not having these overarching requirements that, I've got to go do this or else, it has not affected their day-to-day management regime of how they are tending and caring for their crops.
Yeah, fully agree. And I think that goes to Robert's earlier comment about it's producer developed. So when they come out with these manuals, it's not agency staff up in Tallahassee telling people how to farm. There's a consortium of growers, experts from UF-IFAS. So a lot of this stuff, even if it weren't in the manual, if you had your extension agent come out, he'd be telling you to do the same stuff.
It's a ground up kind of philosophy.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
You mentioned ag classified. I don't know that we've gotten into that one, the difference between ag classification versus ag zoning. And we've used the term greenbelt several times. Everybody uses that. It's never actually used in the statute. It's never been in the statute.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So the ag classification, that's going to be completely different than ag zoning. And we get that question all the time from clients. Well, I'm zoned agriculture. Can I do this? And the ag classification is to tell you what you are doing, and ag zoning is going to tell you what you can do. So the ag classification is also voluntary. You can be a bona fide farm and never apply for it, and you're going to pay more taxes, and you're not going to avail yourself to all these protections we've been talking about. But you don't have to be classified. But if you want to be,
even though your land is zoned ag, doesn't mean you're classified for property taxes and other things from an ag.
And you can be ag classified on land that is not zoned ag.
Correct.
Yeah.
I know a couple clients who are in that same bucket. It's a long-term development site, and it's not zoned ag, but they're running cattle, and they've had greenbelt historically. Greenbelt, that word again, it's not a statute, but that's what everybody says. So it's been greenbelted for years. Yeah. Keep it going.
And so every year you'll apply to your local property appraiser. So every one of the 67 every year, they go through and make an inventory. I don't know that the Monroe County property appraiser has a whole lot of work in this realm, but they go through and they say, we look at every single piece of property, who is doing agriculture and who is not. And they say, what were you doing on January 1? And if you were engaged in a bona fide commercial good faith effort to make agricultural use of your land, you can be classified as agricultural, i.e. green belted. Your property taxes will drop about 66% on average.
It's a big savings.
It's a big savings.
Big savings.
So, and that's just your property taxes. We've talked about all these benefits in terms of regulation, permitting, but you can also avail yourself to all the sales tax exemptions that are available. So when you're buying fuel, farm equipment, and there was a recent initiative. I say recent, but that was 2 years ago. The team card from DAX. You used to have to, you'd go to your farm store, you'd have to sign a affidavit saying, yes, this is going to be used for an agriculture and I'm green belted.
Farm use.
Yeah. And it was cumbersome. So nobody did it. And so they came out with this team card. You can apply to the Department of Agriculture. You get a nice plastic card in the mail, and then you can present that, and that's all you need. And so that was an initiative that was pushed forward by the industry and spearheaded by Commissioner Simpson. And I think the reviews have been very good.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of states have adopted those too. That has become widely popular.
So a lot of good things, right, with BMPs, from a protection, from a approval, from we've now talked about tax savings, things like that. From a pure like regulatory inspection perspective, you enroll. What does that look like? How often people coming out? What's the timeline? What's the requirements on that end of it?
Yeah. So the Department of Agriculture, I think it's every 2 years now, Allan. It's periodic.
They changed that under the Clean Waterways Act. It used to be you just submitted your notice of intent and then nobody came out.
Yeah. Now they come out. But it's DAX coming out. So and that's the other big division. Department of Agriculture comes out. I think they come out every 2 years. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm relatively sure. But they periodically come out to make sure that, yes, you are enrolled and you have now implemented the best management practices. And so some of it would be if you were doing something that's clearly stupid from a water standpoint, they go, dude, you got to clean that up. I mean, you can't do that. I mean,
if you're going to be enrolled, let's be reasonable here.
Yeah, you at least have to follow them, right? And so they'll come out and they'll certify that everything's still copacetic and you're still implementing these things, and so things are good, right? If that turns out to be no, you're not implementing these correctly or at all or whatever, because previously nobody came and checked.
Right.
Now they're coming and checking. They'll work with you to try to get you into compliance. But if you won't get in compliance, and if you're in a basin management action plan area, and it gets complicated, but it's kind of not, and they can then send a referral to the Department of Environmental Protection to actually enforce under the Basin Management Action Plan criteria for that impaired water body. And I was a general counsel at DEP.
Mm-hmm.
You do not want those people in your business. And I love a lot of colleagues. I love a lot of the folks over there.
Good folks. You just don't want them.
Good folks that come over for lunch. They're great to talk to, visit, go to a ball game.
But stay out of the paperwork.
You do not want them coming out and saying, you don't want to get a letter from them saying you have a compliance assistance letter. We think you're out of line here on your implementation, your BMPs. Let us help you get back in shape. Because if you ignore that, then the next thing they send you is a notice of violation, and that's usually when I get called. You don't call me for this. You can avoid that.
Probably for other things, but if you can avoid
no.
But picking up on that, I think what I was hearing was maybe there's some hesitancy from people about coming onto your farm. Both Robert and I have worked in legal at Department of Agriculture, and I think he'd agree with me, and I think everybody there would probably agree with me. That agency is unique, and I truly believe that they see themselves as partners, and there's a very light regulatory touch.
Yeah.
It's only when you ignore that things can go sideways, but for the most part, they are always trying to work with you.
Yeah. So we had literal fights. So I was at DEP at the time. I was the general counsel at DEP at the time, I recall, and they were coming out with a best management practice. And I think the crop issue was watermelons for whatever reason. And it was the amount of expected gain from a reduction of nitrogen and phosphorus being put in fertilizer on there as far as a runoff. And they were protecting springs up in that, that Big Bend area up there, that springs area. And so I didn't want to be involved in the conversation. I didn't want to do it at all. But my role in that was talking with the researchers at the University of Florida. And they're like, our BMPs have half as much fertilizer on these crops because we're doing it whatever way they were doing it, right? I mean, they've research stations all over the place. I'm like, I got it. And I get it. And so you should have half as much runoff. I said, but you got to go, I need research that shows that it's one half, because DEP's role is oversight to make sure that the BMPs as implemented are successful in order to attain the water quality standards that the state requires. And so I didn't want to be involved in that conversation. I mean, I wanted to go, makes sense to me, good to go. But I wasn't representing them. I was representing DEP.
Right.
So I'm like, you got to show it. And so, we were kind of round and around on that. And, and they probably the friendliest cross-examination they've ever had, because they really didn't want to do it. But it was pretty clear that there's some other steps need to do. And I'll tell you, the scientists in the infrastructure at University of Florida IFAS and what they're doing across the state for agriculture is mind-boggling, just mind-boggling of the advances that they've made and the things that make it better,
Yeah. So. Brandon, from a management standpoint, BMPs, how does that impact, at the farmer level, you from a manager perspective in terms of trying to maximize productivity of a property, but also long-term viability of it and maintaining it, as an investment grade type property?
So when we're looking at let's just take the private equity world, buying a piece of property, most of these groups enjoy the BMPs, knowing that the property has some sort of maintenance built into it that the tenants are generally complying with, and also gives them a level of risk management too, in that the fertilizers are not being over applied, irrigation practices are being done, and those are being completed in compliance, and not overwatering and not using too much water than what's necessary. It also helps out the tenant too from cost perspective, it doesn't show in the field, but when you start looking at profit and loss statements, if you're able to put out less fertilizer and accomplish the same yield, you're winning on your income statements and profit and loss. So it's a wonderful situation there.
Yeah, and the more savings people have on that side of it, the less they're impacted by rent rates and things like that a little bit, right?
Correct. It balances a lot of stuff out. Guys mentioned a little while ago, just talking about how easy FDAX is to work with. I've always found them in the management side. They've been excellent and very understanding of even special circumstances that may come up from time to time. So yeah, overall, the BMP program is great in my personal opinion and my dealings that I've had with it. I want to throw a reversal question out there to you guys. If someone chooses not to enroll in BMPs, what's the alternative? Because I sure don't know what it is.
Well, there is an alternative.
Well, in the context of the B maps, we've talked about that.
Correct. I should have clarified that a little bit better, but yes.
Yeah. The alternative is you come up with your own plan to how you're going to meet the water quality certification requirements of your runoff from your farm. You can come up with your own plan if you want, or you can implement these. And the statute clearly has that in there. It's an or. You can enroll in BMPs, and I probably have a note here or something to say exactly what the legal terminology is, but you come up with your own water quality plan for your operation. Nobody does that. Why would you? Yeah.
And would that have to be rubber stamped by a engineer or someone licensed or anything like that?
Yeah, it would have to be put together with engineering and all of the testing on the back end and all of that.
Why reinvent the wheel when it's already?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and that's why tell me about what I've always heard from folks when a client comes in, the first thing we ask them, are you enrolled in BMPs? And they go, no. Like, well, you need to call FDAX and get enrolled. But what I've always heard is when FDAX comes out and looks at what's going on, you're already doing most of that stuff, if not all that stuff anyway. Is that about right?
Yeah, 90% of the BMPs that are written out there are already things like precision ag related. We talked about, the irrigation systems, that not everybody may have a zone or speed zone center pivot set up, but water usage is well in line. Fertility, most everybody is doing some sort of precision ag variable rate fertilizer application to help not just blanketly apply fertilizers and pesticides as well out there too. And even on cattle farms, most guys are fencing out sensitive areas or grazing during, very, very dry times in potential moist water situations. So yeah, most all of it is very, very straightforward.
And that's a good point. So we talk about BMPs. It's easy to think about a center pivot or irrigation and, the cool stuff that's going on. But some of the BMPs for ranchers, you've got a little wetland out there. Let's put a fence around that. And that's it.
Yeah.
That's the implementation of a good BMP. And it does, it does what it's supposed to do,
Right. The one except where I have seen people come up with their own, and I use that term loosely, is in the forestry context. They'll have a private forester that will put together a plan, and it's usually put together in conjunction with the U.S. Forest Service, and it's because they have their own grant programs as well. But they look a lot alike.
Kind of shifting gears a little bit. One thing I want to hit on before we conclude is we talked a lot about the citrus health programs, things of that nature. Can you talk a little bit about that and kind of tie it back into, greenbelt property taxes, like you mentioned earlier, just some of those programs that are out there. If you have a old grove that has been impacted, what can you do?
Yeah. Tell them about the CHIRP program.
Yeah. So, everybody should know, citrus is and was even more a huge part of our economy. That's why it's on our license plates. I think the number I heard recently was 20 years ago, it was a $70 billion industry. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
And I think it's down to maybe 10.
Yeah.
Is that? It
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
The percentages sound right.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
It was a shocking number to me. But so DPI, the Division of Plant Industry, that's a division within DAX. They're based in Gainesville. There's a fun story about why they're there. They actually predate the Department of Agriculture.
Really?
The
Wow.
state plant board was set up through the University of Florida, and they were the predecessor to Department of Ag. And so when they created the Department of Agriculture, they already had the expertise and the scientists and everybody and the feeder institution for it all there. And so like, well, you guys can stay here. And the director and assistant director of DPI, they're actually considered faculty at the University of Florida in addition to being state employees, which is kind of just a funny history. But
That's interesting.
Also the largest collection of arthropods in North America, and top 5 in the world, I'm pretty sure. So they have a big bug museum there.
Really?
They're in little drawers.
They're in little drawers. Yeah. they were running out of space at one point and had put in for a legislative budget request. They're like, we need more space for our bugs. But
Wow.
I digress. Their job is to control the spread of plant pest and disease. So everybody should know about canker. Largely under control now. Citrus black spot.
Originally how some of these programs came about. Right?
Yes. So
canker.
The Citrus Health Response Program was set up basically we got to do something because canker is ravaging all the groves. And one of the ways they tried to fight it was by pushing over groves. They found out, if we have all these groves next to each other, it's just going to spread like any disease. And so we need to have essentially, to use a forestry term, we need to have fire lines. And so if you've got a dead grove or an abandoned grove, it's still a vector for that disease. And so the legislature said, look, push it over, burn it. We don't want to take away that ag classification because we don't want to now disincentivize you from helping us out.
The goal is to incentivize people.
By having your property taxes jump up because now you're no longer engaged in bona fide ag. They said, if you push it over and you enroll in an abandoned grove compliance agreement, it's a 1-page form. Basically what it says is every once in a while, walk around and make sure that no new trees are popping up. Mm-hmm. That's all you do. We'll continue to treat you as ag classified, and we'll give you a de minimis property valuation. So it's about $50 an acre is what you end up paying. That was 5 years. 2 years ago, the legislature expanded it, and maybe a year ago. It's 10 years.
10 years now. Yeah.
And so for a lot of major landowners, if you've maybe thinking you want to get out of the citrus industry, or you've bought land that has some old citrus on it, that's a program you should look into.
And it's not just active growers, right? It's people who are buying land and land bankers, and maybe that's a transitional use over time, but it's a dead grove that's just sitting there that needs to be pushed.
Well, and it's not just a dead grove that's sitting there. It's a like Allan was saying, it's a vector. That's where these things are going to live and continue to spread to other groves. Yep. And so it's very much like cutting the cancer out. You got to get that stuff cut out.
Yeah.
And so that's why the program was there. So it's not necessarily some ag benefit, to that landowner.
It helps other landowners.
It's getting that protection in place to try to save the other. So it's kind of an interesting.
Yeah. And I'll just clarify, because you use dead grove. I mean, it applies to live, healthy citrus as well. Like if you bought land and you don't think you can care for it, the legislature wants you to push it.
Or you want to push it and convert it to something else. And
yeah.
Well, wonderful, guys. And I appreciate y'all joining us today, and appreciate y'all's friendship to our company and our team. And how can people get in touch with you? People who want more information, your website.
What is our website name?
LLW-law.com.
There we go. Or get in touch with us and we'll put you in touch with these guys.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to tell you, I'm one of the few lawyers I know that I truly enjoy what I do. I think it's so much fun still, sometimes I want to pull my hair out and sometimes it drives me a little crazy, but we get some cool stuff. We get to do cool stuff sometimes.
We're doing a lot of good as well with what you're doing.
Yes.
I don't know.
Compared to some attorneys.
I don't know. I'm having fun. So
you mentioned that the last ag conference I went to. Somebody asked me, well, what do you do? I'm a lawyer. And I said, but wait, I represent landowners. And then there was a sigh of relief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're the good guys. Yeah. Not all built the same. So no, thank y'all so much for jumping on. Brandon, thank you for jumping on as well from South Carolina.
I've had a great time, guys. Thank y'all so much.
And appreciate y'all's friendship, support, and I look forward to seeing you at our land conference coming up.
Yes, sir.
Thanks so much.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the In Our Expert Opinion Real Estate Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you never miss any of our upcoming episodes. For more on land and commercial real estate, please connect with us at saundersrealestate.com.